This is your meeting. It's the rank and file meeting for Manchester, the North West. Elect yourself a committee. Pick yourself a site. Get them out, because that's the way we're going to win. And here's how unpopular I'm going to be. I'll have a pop at Wayne Rooney, and then I'll match it up with Tevez. When Wayne Rooney went off the pitch in an England shirt after playing shite, and he criticised the fans for booing him, he was wrong, because we pay his wages. When Tevez refused to go on from the bench, he was wrong, because we pay his wages. So when I criticise Unite officials for being behind the game, for not doing what they ought to do, and getting the ballot they've known for long enough, and tell me how difficult it is because of membership lists, it ain't good enough. And I will criticise. It's called, by the way, constructive criticism. And when they have a pop at me and call me a cancerous group, they're wrong. I pay their wages. That's what you get paid for. Get the ballot organised. In the meantime, when Red Egg Miliband, who our Union Unite funded to the hilt, 100 grand out of our pockets so he could win the Labour leader, when he refuses to support the public sector strikes in June, he's wrong. When he don't turn up for a vote, mind you, on the minimum errors bill, that's when you could have about a dozen, talking about the ballot, a dozen ballot papers that are spoiled. That can constitute a reballot. He's wrong. And I'll criticise him because our union pays his wages. I think there's no joined up thinking in our union. And this is what I think my view is. I think our union should be at the top to say no cuts. Not just in Birmingham, where it's a Tory-controlled council. Not just in Southampton, and I'll support the strikes in Southampton, where it's a Tory-controlled council, but here in Manchester, where it's a Labour-controlled council. We shouldn't be funding any single Labour MP or council that don't support our policies, and our policies is no to PFI, no to privatisation, and no to cuts to members' jobs and conditions, and that's why we shouldn't be supporting them, in my view. I think it should be public ownership. And all this will have a theme, I promise you, to get back to where we are. I think we should have public ownership of transport, not the train prices I paid coming up today, because the coach wouldn't have got me here on time, and energy. Not so I can pay through the nose when all the big six or whatever they are have a price freeze cartel and I can't afford to turn the heating on with me gas and me electric. We should have a public owned energy as well. But by the way, we have got sparks in the energy industry. And this is where Unite is powerful. If it had the courage, we can, you can, we ought to turn the lights off. We can do that. I think we should scrap Trident, by the way. £75 billion. I'm a Democrat, so let's have a vote on it. What do we want for £75 billion? Do we want houses, schools and hospitals, create 100,000 jobs for bricklayers, for plasterers, for labourers, for sparks? Do we want 1 million green jobs? Filling our factories, not emptying them. Or do we want £75 billion of a nuclear deterrent? Well, I tell you, I want 1 million green jobs, and the first 3,200 ought to be offered to every single blacklisted electrician, spark, and in the construction industry. You see, Bombardier in Derby, I cry a lot. So what? I cry when Rovers lose by about 20-5 today. Bristol Rovers, not Blackburn, they're bad enough. Bristol Rovers are worse. By about 20-5 tonight, I'll be in floods of tears. But I cried with Bombardier. Bombardier makes the rolling stock for trains. Derby's the factory. They're Unite members along with 1 or 2 other unions. They lost the contract, didn't get the contract, but they were going to sack 1,000 anyway who were agency. Going to sack 1,000 anyway. But what are we doing as a union? We're begging or demanding. It's the same thing when you only wring your hands of the condemned government to place a contract with Bombardier. Well, I tell you, my geography ain't that good, but Bombardier's a Canadian company. I've got nothing wrong with that. But it ain't this British jobs for British workers bullshit, by the way. This is a Canadian company. Anyway, we're begging a Tory government who hates trade unionists to give a contract to a firm in Derby who are owned by Canadian. And we'll march around the town, we'll lobby an MP or two, might even be sponsored by Unite. But unless they hit the streets, and I'll be the first one to Derby to offer solidarity, unless they occupy that factory because there's work there to be done, it'll lose. And the same can be said for BAE Systems. Right here, if I was, I don't know, strong enough, I could throw a stone in it, Salisbury. I could throw a stone in it, Wharton. They used to argue, by the way, I never believed it, and they used to argue, wars are good for the defence industry. How many have we got allowed? Iraq, 10 years now. Afghanistan, Libya, 7 times over the amount, 1.75 billion, and still they're sacking thousands. But you can march as much as you want. You can campaign all you like, and they have their place. Protests, absolutely. But unless you stop the job, unless you agree with the TUC and have a bit of civil disobedience, unless we can inspire people to come out, it'll go down. It will go down, and we can't wait for the union. Of course we want the union there, alongside us. I'd have loved them in this room. All those who called me a mindless whatever, I'd have loved them in this room. But they're not here. So we got to do it until they catch up. And that is down to us. And I'm going to round it all up now, because I was listening to the radio this morning before I came up, and it was this month, I think 1985, somebody will correct me, this month in 1985 was the Toxteth riots. Well, actually in this town a few weeks ago we had some riots again, and in Bristol we had riots. Usually I had to go to London for the old riot, but it was just at the top of my street, so that was magic. No coach fare at all. But the looting didn't start weeks ago. It started years ago. It was the bosses of the finance companies who were allowed to loot by the Tories, and then under Labour for 13 years, funded to the hilt by the trade union movement and let off the hook. And they've looted this country. So they will be paying for the next decade or more. And they've raised the retirement age to 67, 68. Under Labour, brought forward under Tory, dead people don't draw pensions. It was them that started the looting. And what was, here's the theme, I'm going to come on to Sparks now. What was the Rogues Gallery of 8 that announced they were going to leave the JIB? What was the 8 is now 7. 7, 1's down, 7 to go. But they're going to loot your wages. That's what they're going to do, because they're greedy. Not for the profits that Steve announced, but more of it. And they're literally going to take the money out of your pockets, turn you upside down and shake you, just in case you ain't going to give it to them. Take your money out of your pockets and stuff it into theirs. They're going to take the food off your table and stuff it down their throats. And the government will make sure, by the way, that you never make 68 and work you to death. So, because dead people don't draw pensions. Unless the 8 became 7, becomes 6. I think grats are weak. It was rumoured they was wobbling weeks ago. Well, let's push them over the edge. And it is us. And I'll be there in solidarity. And I know there's people in this room that aren't Sparks. That's called solidarity. And they're welcome on our demonstrations and our protests. I tell you, because if we don't win, then we've lost. That ain't me being magic there, is it? If we don't win, we've lost. But it'd be a devil a job to get it back. And I think on this is the one. If we run with it, you don't just defend the JIB, you make it better. And I'm just going to tell 2 little ones now about, you just don't know what's going on inside places. This is within the last fortnight. West Burton site. West Burton shop stewards met and they discussed walking out, because this thing was happening in London and it happened 1 or 2 other places in Liverpool and everything else, and they was hearing about it, and the rank and file was sending out the emails. So please put your contact list, your name on the contact list. It won't be death by email, but you know that stuff's happening and where it's going on, and it lifts you. We got to lift each other. So West Burton met, and the shop stewards narrowly voted not to walk. narrowly voted. In fact, the abstentions, I'm told, were bigger than the votes for or against, because people are unsure. Of course they are. But one of those stewards, who lives in Newcastle, came to the Newcastle branch, not the Newcastle construction branch, and herein lies the tale of what's possible. The Newcastle General branch, who opened up its doors, let everybody know, let all the sparks, all the pipe fitters come to our meeting. It's a free venue, talk about the problem, decide what you decide, pick a side. And he came from West Burton, and he gave us the telephone number of the convener, who we rang by request. West Burton, within the next week, had voted and decided 200 odd to go to Lindsay, just down the road, Lindsay at Humberside, which was the scene, in my view, of a famous victory, where every side struck in solidarity. And don't take my word for it, the Financial Times reported it, because the 200 odd from West Burton went to Lindsay, a delegation of 150 come out, the numbers eventually swelled to 500. I think the Morning Star said 2,000, but so be it, 500. And I'm hopeful that West Burton will walk at some stage, if not next week. Lindsay will walk at some stage, if not next week. And I'm confident we can get Gratz to become not the 7, but the 6. You'll know your area the best. That's why you're here today. Steve will know who you are. That's why you've got to say what's on your minds. Get it off your chest. Let's have all the discussion, all the debate, and then the decisions. And the last thing I'm going to say is, in 1975, this month, Muhammad Ali, you'll think the world of him, Muhammad Ali, if I had his body and my attitude, Muhammad Ali fought the Thriller in Manila. It was against Joe Frazier. And he said after the fight that that was the closest thing to death that he could think of. And that's what this is. It's a fight for our lives and our livelihoods. It's all up for grabs. And we got to win it.